Hello and welcome to this week's IG Live. Today we are going to be talking to a friend of mine who is Ute Limacher-Riebold, and we're going to be talking to her about the importance of teaching kids other languages and how reading and writing can help with that. We are exactly 1 week away from our big event, so be sure to go to the link in our bio and you can RSVP for our virtual party, which is taking place next Thursday. It's going to be 9 o'clock evening Eastern time, 6 o'clock here on the West Coast. And it's going to be so much fun. Bonus bundle from Crayola. So it's going to be really fun. And any donations you would like to make to help support the work that we do, we would really appreciate. Hello.
Hello. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. Thank you.
Well, why don't we go ahead and jump in? I'm excited to talk to you because I know, teaching kids other languages, supporting their home languages is something that's really important to both of us. And I think, of course, we're really big on books and reading, and sometimes people don't realize how much books can really help, and also writing can help when you're encouraging kids language learning. But why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us about what you do?
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for having me, Liana, and congratulations what you're doing at Read Your World, because it's really very, very important. So yes, my name is Ute Limacher-Riebold, and I grew up with multiple languages. I'm a linguist and also an intercultural communication expert at my international lounge, where I help multilingual families actually maintain their languages and cultures whilst living abroad, and also embrace new languages and cultures in a most successful way. We try our best. So I do this through one-on-one consultations, webinars, or in-person workshops, trainings, and my online courses.
And one of the things I love about you is that you have this academic background, that you know all of the academic reasons and strategies, but you also have practical experience because you yourself, as you mentioned, grew up speaking multiple languages and you raise kids who speak multiple languages. But why is this something that's so important to you?
Yeah, I might say it's because I grew up that way. I grew up with multiple languages myself. And it's very normal where I grew up and my context to use several languages and also dialects, and also to constantly learn more about them and additional ones. And I'm not an exception. More than half of the world's population speaks or understands more than one language. So with when did it start? Actually, when people started to think that knowing several dialects and languages is actually something that hinders learning the standard language or other languages, that is where I was triggered. I said, well, no, it's not. It's not something that is hindering. It's something that is actually an asset. Unfortunately, this belief that multiple languages confuse children or people in general, and that you cannot attain high levels of proficiency in any language if you are multilingual, that still persists. So I knew from my readings and from my studies what is true and what is possible. And growing up like that and working in that environment, I knew how big of an asset that can be. Let me just talk about these assets, because I want to start on a on a high note. So there are a lot of assets, or a lot of advantages when knowing more languages. I have a post about this on my website. It's an ongoing post because there are always more things that are discovered that are in favor of that. But let's just name a few. Yeah. So we can focus better, apparently. We are very good at executive functioning because the cognitive capabilities are enhanced, and this includes also reasoning, planning, problem solving. Apparently we're very good at that. We're better at learning additional languages. I think that is very clear because our baseline expands with every language or dialect or sign language that we learn. So the more languages we learn, the better, and the more cultures and languages we can understand, and therefore also the people who use these languages. So we have a much deeper connection with them if we understand what they are saying, why they are saying it that way, etc. So what made me do what I do? Yes, when I noticed that people try to feel multilinguals like incomplete or like lacking something because of the many languages. I could deal with it myself, but when I saw my children being treated like that, I think this is a trigger of every mother or every parent. I had to do something to change this kind of narrative and to change also the perspective that people have, because like I said, millions of other multilinguals are perfectly capable of juggling multiple languages and dialects. So this needs to change. So but the perspective needs to change. And I think it's about time. So what I do now, yes, as you said before, I try to combine my knowledge that I have. I try to keep updated. I'm not working in academia anymore, but I have still some great ex-colleagues who feed me what needs to be fed. But I can also find, I mean, you can also go on ResearchNet or academia, other websites, and read the articles there. So I try to combine that knowledge with my expertise and my experience, my first-hand experience, and the one with my clients or my children who all grew up with multiple languages, to change this narrative.
Yeah, definitely. And I can say that kind of like you. I mean, I studied linguistics, not full time, but I did take some, and even with that, there was always this question of whether it confuses children, whether you should wait, only teach them one language in the way. So even in academia at the time, this was like 20 something years ago, there was still kind of this question about this. So I'm glad that you're dispelling this narrative, because like you said, actually there's so many cognitive benefits to it, in addition to like emotional, connection with family or with new people. And literacy plays such a big role in being able to preserve your family's languages or teach kids new languages. So why is literacy such an important component?
Well, literacy in general, that goes beyond the ability of just reading and writing, right? So literacy encompasses actually the understanding and the proficiency to interpret, to analyze, to communicate also effectively. So books and other written resources, it's actually everything that is written. They are like timeless vessels of knowledge. Yeah, you can just take everything out of them. And then it depends on you what you do with this. Either you forget it and you don't dig any deeper, or you keep on being curious and actually engaging in the reading, and then you learn also much more. And you can actually, books, every reading material can be a very, very powerful tool to foster any language. The same goes actually also for audiobooks. Yeah? And we don't have to forget those who struggle a little bit with reading. And nowadays we have so many audiobooks available. Just look at Spotify, how many things you can find. So there's no excuse, I don't like to read. No, just you can maybe listen to it. And many new authors are very aware of this. And they write the book, and they also record an audiobook. Yeah, also for maybe those who cannot read because they are impaired to some extent. So literacy plays a very crucial role in language learning. And yes, it's an essential skill that we need. Yeah, this is why the schools teach reading and writing, first of all. It helps to expand the vocabulary on so many levels, because especially if we raise our children abroad and we are maybe the only ones who give this input in the language yellow, let's call it language yellow, we talk always about the same kind of topics. Books just open the world to our children. So they can learn from the authors about, I don't know, people in Nicaragua and people in India, how children live in Syria and wherever. So that is something that shouldn't be underestimated.
That's a really great point, because I think about when you're talking about, like, say, if you're the only person that's really teaching your child this language, like we're teaching our children Spanish, but we're almost always talking about things around the house.
Yeah.
Because that's where we're interacting. So they know when we tell them to go brush their teeth or to get ready for dinner or things like that. But like you said, learning about other cultures or learning about space travel, like those are things we don't normally talk about every day, that they
We
can learn
don't.
from your books, right? Do you have any tips about how to foster kids reading in other languages? Because some, you know, that's harder than just conversational, and so sometimes it can be hard to get your kids to read. Do you have any tips about like finding good books, or maybe reading with them, or you know, about how to really encourage that love of reading?
Yes, there are many ways to encourage reading and writing also, because, well, reading and writing, as you said, they are not so easy to learn because they don't come as naturally as speaking. So it needs to be learned in some settings. Sometimes it happens, or often it happens in formal settings at school. Sometimes some parents take it onto their shoulders and teach their children the first words, or to decode the graphemes, the letters, and do this sound letter correspondence by themselves. So, but reading as itself, it's a very complex mechanism that includes many different skills. So how can reading help foster language learning, and how can we encourage our children? Well, it helps to learn the language because it allows a broader vocabulary and access to a broader vocabulary, so that we, after we have read it maybe 1,000 times, other times maybe 10 times, we can then use that word or that kind of sentence, and either in our spoken language use or by writing it at some point. Reading to and with children is very important from very early on, because they get this access to a broader vocabulary. They get access to the structure of the language, to the grammar rules, how our sentences formed in the different languages. Maybe then they see, okay, this sentence in English, the sentence structure from English is not working in the other language. Or, yeah, talking about languages as colors, language yellow has a different syntax structure than language green and blue. And so that is very interesting and exciting, I find, to instill in our children from very early on, and also to be curious about ourselves. So seeing these different patterns, it's a very important step. How can we now encourage our children who are maybe schooled in another language than the ones that we use at home? That's something that many families struggle with, for the simple reason that if our home languages are not taught at school in a formal setting, our children probably don't read at the same level. They maybe don't dare to read. They don't want to approach a book or a written text in the same way as they do with a book that is written in the school language. So very often we can observe that there is a gap between those languages. So the school language is much more developed, and they have higher skills also in reading and writing than in the home language, which is called asynchronous literacy. We interviewed Sabine Little from the University of Sheffield about this at Raising Multilinguals Live. So if you want to have a look what this is and how it looks like, just to get an idea. But when choosing books for these children, it's quite challenging, because maybe my 10-year-old likes, I don't know, to read Harry Potter in the school language, but has a level of literacy or in reading level in the home language of a 7-year-old. So in that case, yes, he's interested in Harry Potter. Maybe you can read with him chapter per chapter, and then stop and ask questions, or try to help him or her to decode the words. Or something that helped my children was to read it first in the stronger language, the book, Harry Potter, whatever other book it was, and then in the other version, so in the translated version. Sometimes they didn't like it, because the translated version, sometimes they said, oh, but this sounds odd, this sound doesn't sound right. But, you know, you take what you can. And then that opens the gate to other books that are then originally written in our home language. So that helps, in my opinion.
Oh, I love it. And we can include the link to that interview for anybody who wants to kind of explore that more, because that's I think that must be such a common dilemma. I know that's definitely the case in in our family and it makes it harder for them to want to read because they don't want to read kind of baby books, because that's the reading level in the other language and is more like picture books, and they want to be reading something more interesting. Although something that's helped us is graphic novels, because then they have the pictures that kind of help them get the sense of it, even if they don't understand every word on the page. But I love the idea of maybe reading a book they've already read in English, or the school language, rereading that in the home language. It's a great idea.
Yeah. And maybe another idea also, when you go to the library or to the bookshop with your child and they want to pick a book and they say, oh, I want to read that, and you're not sure, is it maybe too difficult? Usually we don't worry if it's very easy. Some parents are a little bit like, oh no, that's too easy for you, but just let them read also the very easy books. But if you think it might be too difficult for the child, then sit down and just open it randomly at a page and let them read a page, and then ask them how many words they don't understand, not even with the context. Yeah, they don't need to be able to to explain and to translate or whatever every single word, that not. But if there are like 20% of the words on the page that they don't understand and they don't grasp the plot on the page, then you open on another page randomly, the next one, and you see if that's still the case. And then it might be that it's just maybe a little bit too difficult, but then actually, this is something that some teachers tell the children or the parents to do. But then I saw also we have to look at the single child. Sometimes the children are very excited to read a book that is more difficult for them, and they want to, their curiosity practically makes them read something that is more challenging, even if it is for them maybe to repeat or to read one page twice or 3 times. So there we have to see how our child is, and how they react, and how they are as a character also.
And which goes back to the idea of motivation and need. So if they have that motivation, they want to, especially like you said, let them pick out their books, then maybe if it's something that really interests them, then they'll be more motivated to try and read it. And I think of the same, probably the true for writing. I think writing is also, I would say, it seems to me even more challenging than reading, because reading is a little bit more passive than writing and having to form sentences on your own. Do you have any tips about how to help children, especially if they're not learning the language in the school?
Yes, well, the writing is then the next step, right? Because we can't write if we don't know how these sounds are translated into letters or letter chains. So with a lot of reading, the writing then can also come at some point. I remember that I didn't ask my children to learn how to write in German, for example. They started on their own, and they decided on the text and the words that they wanted to use. So I didn't do it in a systematic way, but now they are able to write letters and emails and things. So I think at some point when you open the gate of the writing, how magical this is, then it can come also in the other languages. But we have also to distinguish between writing texts that you have in your mind, so what you think, you put it on paper or on screen, and the spelling. And very often people think, okay, when my child knows to write, their spelling is impeccable. And there we have to make a little difference. So to go a little bit with the flow of the child, especially if it's a language that they are not taught in a formal setting, then have a look at what they can do by themselves. And then you can add some little rules here and there when they are receptive to receive this kind of criticism or this kind of correction. Otherwise, I would just let them go. And that's just like a phase. This is what they write when they are 6. This is what they write when they are 8. And then you'll see also, with increasingly reading more books in the language, also their writing, their spelling, the syntax structure will become more detailed, longer. The words will become, yeah, a broader vocabulary that they will use. So I find it actually as a mother to see what they are capable of after a while is very impressive, even without, you know, standing there and saying, okay, today it's Wednesday and we have to practice German and sit down and no. I mean, they're at school already. Unless you plan to move to a German-speaking country and they need to know this, but then you may want to have also someone else who teaches in a formal way.
Sure, that makes sense. And I like the idea that you're not, it feels like if you're too critical of the writing, especially early on, then that would kind of shut down any desire they have to write, especially if they're already maybe feeling self-conscious about it anyway.
Yes, yes, very much. But this is where I also am very adamant and very convinced, because it worked with me and it works with my children and the children of my clients, that if you have fun, you know, you make them some games out of this, or a competition. It can be a competition, not where someone wins. Maybe some children really need that, others don't like it. So it's up to you to decide whether you want to make it a competition or not. But that is where also Elisa and I, we wrote this toolbox for multilingual families, full of activities and games that foster speaking, but also reading and writing. And there is also the book by Yoshito. It's also a guide for parents that fosters literacy. So there are so many things that one can do to make it fun. I mean, just think about the game of Scrabble. When I talk about the toolbox or Yoshito's guide, they say, oh, it's something like Scrabble. I said, well, you can expand that, and you can actually use certain games across the languages, across age groups. You can adjust them and play a little bit around with that. So I like this playful part of it, because, well, life is serious and, yeah, sometimes boring enough. So I don't want the language and the moments that I spend with my children, or, yeah, transmitting the language, to become the same. Yeah.
Right. Which makes sense, because I think it can be kind of a delicate balance as parents if we're the ones, like you said, if we're talking about a language that they're not learning at school, so we're the primary teachers to them, it can be hard because we want to be their parents and their teachers at the same time. As a homeschooler, this is something I deal with every day. And you don't, I love the idea of keeping it joyful and keeping it fun and playful with your kids, so that you still have that kind of emotional bond. It doesn't kind of hurt your relationship with them, that it's something that they look forward to and they're motivated and enjoy doing.
Yes. And yes, and diving into a new language is like hacking the code. Yeah, it can be exciting to find out, oh, how does this work, and why does this work in this way and not in another way? And maybe they come up with wonderful ideas, and their imagination is just, yeah, amazing. So I think it's something to enjoy with the children, not something to see as a must. Or, I know it depends on what kind of parent you are. I'm more a playful one, or I prefer not taking the things too seriously. But that makes it also a bit more relaxed, so the pressure is gone. And when the pressure is gone and the playful part is high up, then usually very nice things can happen. So
Great. And you mentioned the toolbox, that the book that you wrote. What other resources do you have? Because I think people should know that you are such a wonderful resource, and I know you have like a YouTube series. And how else can people connect with you if they want to go into this more?
Okay, here on Instagram, they can connect at Ute's Int Lounge, so that is very easy, or through my website, Ute's International Lounge. There you find all kind of links also to the 3 YouTube channels that I work with and have. So one is my own, the Ute's International Lounge, where I share all kind of information, but also practical tips to raise children with multiple languages, to stay multilingual, and also intercultural communication. Then there is another YouTube channel where, together with Yoshito Darmon Shimamori, we share activities and games for multilingual families. So there you can get some ideas. If you're looking for something about speaking, you just go through those videos and you have a look if there is something that inspires you, that you say, oh, I could do this with my children. And if it's about knowing a little bit how raising multilingual children looks like and what to expect, there is the third YouTube channel that we're together with Tetsu Young, my other partner in multilingualism. We interview experts on the topic of raising children with multiple languages, staying multilingual across the lifespan, and yes, everything that has to do with that.
And we should mention you also have consulting services for people who really want to go even further into it, because you mentioned, every child is so different and what they need, and every family situation is so different. For us, for example, raising our kids, teaching them Spanish is different than somebody who moves abroad to a different country and now they suddenly have to learn a new language. There's so many different combinations and situations that people find themselves in. So if you want a really customized help with what you're doing, it is a really wonderful resource for that. So you can do, I know I was just looking on your website the other day, and you have all these different packages that people can do if you just need a little help versus if you want something really in depth. So all different kinds of resources you can get. And thank you so much for joining us. It's always such a pleasure talking with you. I should mention, we did interview Yoshito, if anybody wants to go back to our archive and look at that. He's also really wonderful. And I love that you guys have a channel where you're working together. And and thank you for all your support of Read Your World. We really appreciate it and appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today.
Absolutely. I'm very, very happy to do so. And I wish you all the best. And I will be there when you're going to be celebrating it.
Yes.
So
I can't wait. Good. I'm glad you're going to be there. Anybody else, if you haven't signed up, go RSVP. It's going to be really fun. And if you want to watch this, if you just joined us late, it's going to be up in a few minutes on Instagram and later on our YouTube channel, so you can go back and watch the whole thing. Thank you, Ute. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miranda.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye.